So this week, we're actually taking a little step back in time. So one of our first videos that did actually really well was just a simple card holder that kind of folds over. It's a neat one, but it was when we weren't talking, we're making patterns. So we decided to go back and I made the pattern, but then I also modified it a little bit. And we're going to walk you through making it. Now, someone asked me the other day, someone left a comment, and they said, well, we always see like the patterns you're working from, but what do the patterns look like when we download them? So I wanted to show you, this is the finished pattern. This is what it looks like. So we make very simple patterns. They only cost a couple bucks, but they work perfectly. So you get the line where you would glue this, you get instructions on what to cut out, what to keep, how many of each piece to cut. It's fairly simple. And by keeping them super simple, we can be like, hey, $2, they're not 15 or 20 or whatever. And all of our patterns are open use. You can make them to sell, you can brand them, you can do whatever you want. I'm not the type to sell you a pattern and try to put limits on it. So that being said, this is what it looks like when you download it. There's a little line. This is 2 inches. If it measures 2 inches, you know all your measurements are good. And that's about it. So let's get into it. So before we start, actually, I wanted to show you, Kayleen realized the other day, we wore out a ruler. Never done that before. So Kayleen was using this edge. We always use this edge on this ruler. I don't know why we only have one ruler in our workshop that we we have others, but we always use this one. And it doesn't cut straight lines anymore. I don't know if the camera can pick it up. But so this one is straight. This one, when both the ends are touching, we've used this. I've had this ruler for 15 years. It's just fully bowed. So I didn't even know that was possible, but FYI, check your rulers because you might not be cutting straight lines. So this one's going on the wall. It's time for that one to retire. First thing we need to do, I'm going to show you how I cut out the middle section of this pattern. We're going to be using a 3/4 inch strap end punch to get these curves perfect. So all we're going to do, I really like using Weaver strap end punches because they don't have, this isn't going to work if you're using one like this. I guess actually it would work okay, but if you're going to do this method, you could always just hand cut it. Weaver does the strap end punches that don't extend, which I really like. This is what I'm talking about. You see how this one has these flat parts? It works for straps, but this one's a better general, like I end up finding a lot of uses that aren't strap ends for this one, whereas this one I pretty much only use for strap ends. So that being said, I'm actually going to use it to cut out my pattern itself, and all I'm going to do is line this up. It's sized for 3/4 inch. Punch through, and you don't want to make a habit of using your nice sharp tools on paper all the time, but every once in a while, it's not going to hurt. Now all we have to do is cut these straight lines and our pattern's ready. So leather weight is actually kind of important on this pattern. You want to stick with if you're not going to skive, stick with a 3 ounce all around. This is about a heavy 4, but I am going to skive. So just to show you, you can make it work with a heavy 4, we're going to do it this way. I wouldn't go much heavier than that because then the proportions are going to work kind of weird, and you could do it with 5. It'd be thick too, but I would stick to like between 3 and 4, and use 3 if you don't want to skive anything. For our thumb slider, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my 3/4 inch strap end punch, and I'm going to punch those curves. And this is just, I can cut them, but you just get such a cleaner line doing it this way for like really tight curves like this, that this is kind of, if I'm able to, kind of how I always do it. And then just finish it off with a ruler. Or actually, you can go freehand too if you want. The thing I actually like about using strap and punch is, I don't know if the camera picks it up, but it kind of already leaves a beveled edge. And it can be kind of difficult sometimes to bevel a really tight curve like that. So with this, you have your corners beveled already, and all I'm going to do is come in and take, I'm using a 0, so the smallest beveler I have, and just take off that same amount on the straight edges here, and you can see how where this is a straight cut into that bevel, on the side that we beveled, it's a perfect curve, so you don't even see where the punch ends and the hand cutting begins. I'm also going to bevel and burnish these tops, because once we get everything glued together, these are going to be kind of inset in the wallet, so you won't be able to burnish them once we're all sewn up. So if you use 3-ounce leather, you're not going to have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm using a little bit thicker leather. So on the pattern, this is going to be a dotted line, not a straight line, but, well, it's going to be straight, it's just not going to be solid. What I did was I transferred this line on to here with pencil, and I did that because what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over, and we're going to transfer that line also to the front with our scratch awl, and that's going to tell us where our outer shell is going to stop. Right? So I kind of want to leave some thickness in here. And we also left enough room that if you want to round these corners, these two, you can as well. Maybe we'll do that after everything's glued up. We'll see how it looks. But the first thing, if you do have to skive, what I like to do when I have to do a skive and stop in the middle of a edge is I take my skiving knife, and you got to kind of practice this because it's a little sketchy. Not in a way you're going to hurt yourself, just in a way that you could kind of cut through your leather. And I make like a little downwards cut on both sides, but go very carefully, because if you keep your skiving knife sharp, which you should, because a dull knife is a dangerous knife, you can easily just cut through this whole piece, which, you know, it's a 4-inch by 3-inch piece, but it's just kind of a pain when you got to stop and redo it. And this leather's kind of old, so it's a little tougher to skive because it's dried out a bit, but we can make do. And so what that cut allows us to do, and you never get it perfect, but you get close, is I can do that. No, that's not my cleanest one, but we'll clean it up. There we go. So you see we have a nice bevel there, so that when we match that up, we're going to have some thickness here so it doesn't feel flimsy, but then we're going to have as thin as possible of a center seam, of a center piece, so that this outer piece will pick up the thickness and continue it on, so it'll be as even as we can get it. Alright, and so we have all of our pieces cut, burnished. I didn't burnish the top of this yet because I'll wait to see if we're going to round the corners, and we'll just burnish all together once it's glued. Now you can put this together in two ways. The original way, I think I stitched along the bottom, but I actually have since decided to stop stitching along the bottom because the cards just kind of naturally stop because it's got a fold over thing, and it just looks cleaner that way. And everything kind of lays a little bit nicer when there isn't that stitch line there. So while I did skive it to keep it thin, I'm only going to glue the two sides. But if you want to glue the bottom and stitch it all around, or stitch the bottom before you put everything together, I'll show you when you'll stitch it. Basically just the next step, you would stitch it instead of gluing everything, or gluing the other piece on. Because we want that to line up, because the rest is going to be hidden. Well, mostly hidden. And we'll just glue that down. Grab our hammer. I'm going to grab a little bit of sandpaper. I'm going to go in, sand that down. And this is the bottom that's going to be in the wallet. And then we'll just grab a little bit of gum trag. And well, no one will really touch a lot of this, but there is going to be a little bit of it open on the bottom there. So we just want to make it feel nice. There we go, nice and burnished. And so now we're ready to transfer our marks for our next glue line, which is going to be where we put our exterior shell, I guess, I think I called it. We're going to fold the big piece over the inner piece. I never know what to call those parts of wallets, but exterior shell sounds good enough. Just make sure that you're doing it on the right side. I've made this design before where all of a sudden I glue it and it's upside down and you have this really thin skived piece that it just doesn't work. I mean, works, but doesn't look great. And then before we add any glue, what I like to do is take our big outside piece and get that fold kind of creased in there. We are going to unfold it to glue, but it just helps once we glue everything together to just have that sort of structure started at least. Now, there's two ways you can glue this. You can glue one side at a time, or you can do both at the same time. The first video, I think we did it one side at a time, but that was 3 years ago, you know? We've all been working with leather a little bit longer at this point, so we're gonna go and do it it's not the smarter way. It's not a smart way at all, but it's the quicker way. So I'm gonna actually glue all 4 of these sides and then just like prop it up on something so it can dry, and then we'll just be able to kind of do it all in one go. And I think realistically, if you're making these, I know a lot of people that watch us want to sell their stuff, and you know, time is a concern. So this is one of those instances where the quality is going to be the same, but if you can find a way to kind of prop it up, you're going to save 1 glue line's worth of waiting for glue to dry. That might not seem like much over one wallet, but if you have to make 20 of these, you know, you're talking about an extra maybe hour or so total. So that's an hour of labor that you can either be doing something else, or you can pass the savings on to your customer by making the piece a little bit cheaper. So what I usually do is I just take a spool of thread and I just balance it on there. And then I go to the big piece, and we're going to glue everything, but like I've done this before. What I like to do is I take my finger, you want to leave about that much of it open on the bottom. That's it. I suppose you could say a 1/2 inch or whatever, but I just kind of do a finger's width. And on this one, we're gluing all the way up to the top seam, because remember, the top seam is going to land, I think it's 0.7 inches from the top of the main body there. All right, so now that our glue's dry, we're going expert mode glue up here, which really isn't that difficult. You want your glue to be dry to the touch. Remember, we're not using this glue really structurally because we're going to be stitching it as well. So I never usually worry about putting glue down on my cutting mat. That's why I use these plastic ones like this. I'm going to do that because I'm going to use these lines to make sure that I am setting down our outer shell straight. In my experience, at least for me, it's actually the hardest to glue straight lines. Like if you do a notch or a curve, it kind of hides if you get things a little crooked. So I always try to use my grid to make sure that everything ends up straight. Now the other side, on the other hand, is fairly easy because I'm just going to go, and this is a tight fit, but it fits very nicely. I'm just going to go and make sure that's all lined up, and that's it. So in a way, I know gluing one side at a time might seem like it's a little easier, but I actually prefer doing this for a lot of reasons. It does take less time, but it's also, for some reason, I always get a better result when I do it this way as well. And there we go. So you can see where I'm stopping the stitch line. My center piece here ends there. I like to stop my stitch line right before it, because if you can put a stitch line in there, but it just kind of gets a little weird and it pulls this kind of tight. So this way it just gives it a little more room to kind of stay open. So if you want to put more than one card in each pocket, it's easier to do that. So we'll just stitch the next stitch line and then we'll sew it up. Too long. Gave us a quick little sand to make sure everything was nice and even. And this is why I waited to do anything on the top, because when I do card holders that are kind of like this, what I'll do is first I'll go in and I'll just kind of, just kind of take off a little bit of this, little fuzzies here. And we're doing this before we just go around the whole thing and just bevel like normal. And I'm using that same beveler. I prefer a very small beveler. I know a lot of people don't even consider a size 0 beveler a beveler, but I don't like to take off a whole ton. I'll go in with sandpaper after this and just kind of fine tune it. And with weaver's line specifically, I find that the 0 is like, I use it on belts, I use it on wallets. You can do it for 3 ounce, you can do it for 12 ounce. But I don't like that. If you prefer to be using like a big beveler that's going to like fully round over a belt hide, like a 12 ounce hide, obviously the 0 is too small. But it just, all I want, I like that nice flat edge there, so you can see the layers once you burnish. That's all I'm personally looking for, but don't feel like any choice you make if you want to go with a bigger beveler is wrong, because it's not. It's all just personal preference. And here we go. So actually, we found our Blockbuster cards. I lost them for a while, so they haven't made an appearance. But so this is how the wallet looks when it's done. So you have 2 outward-facing thumb slot card slots, and then on the inside, squeeze it. I like to put bills in this one, but you can also fit a whole bunch more cards if you want. And that's it. It's a pretty simple design. I'm just happy from a personal standpoint of the way that we adjusted this this slot. So it lays much nicer now. If you want to see it totally done without anything in it, it's kind of almost architectural looking. Kind of looks like a drawing of a building, which I like. And I think the round corners personally are the way to go, but you can do whatever you want. And I also think leaving the bottom unsewn is the way to go. It functions a lot nicer, but if you pick up the pattern, give it a go both ways. Try to sew it, try to not sew it. You could maybe sew the corners so that you can't see the stitching in the middle. You can do a lot with this. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.